Who are the people around you?
Okay.
Where are the places that you frequent physically and mentally? And what are the things that you interact with and do most frequently? The combination of those three things is always going to produce your mindset. If you want to change your mindset, make adjustments to those three things.
Hey there, fellow citizens of the internet. Welcome to the Moses Kabandana Podcast, where conversations worth having take place. Today, I have with me Paul Croswell, and we're going to be discussing about mindset. And without any further ado, Paul, welcome to the Moses Kabandana Podcast.
Moses, thanks so much for having me. It's a pleasure to be here. Looking forward to this conversation.
Awesome. So we're going to be talking about mindset, and I hear that word being tossed around left and right all the time. Positive attitude. I have a good mindset. Have the propensity to push through all kinds of stuff, independently of the difficulties that you face in life. What are for you what are the biggest misconceptions about a positive mindset? Like, what does that mean? Because when I hear a positive mindset, I hear, just be happy. Or that can be the superficial way of understanding a mindset. So what would you say are the biggest misconceptions of positive mindset for you?
Yeah, I think that probably the biggest misconceptions that I come across when it comes to the idea of positive mindset or mindset in general is that it's sort of a switch that you just flip. Like, you wake up one day and just decide, this is the mindset that I'm going to have, that I want to have. And that's just not what the research reveals. The research reveals that you can cultivate a specific mindset. You can shape your life in such a way, with the people, places, things that you interact with, in such a way that it produces a different mindset inside of you. But, the idea that, you can just tell, it's like telling someone who's depressed, just be happy. They wish they can, they wish they
Right.
can flip a switch and just be happy, but it just doesn't work that way. It takes time and cultivation. So that's probably the biggest misconception when I talk to clients. It's just like, man, I really wish I can just flip a switch and get there. But that's not how it works.
Yeah. You are a business. You're a mindset coach.
Yeah.
What does that mean? And can you lay down the foundation of what makes someone a mindset coach? What goes into it? How did you end up, as a business, as a mindset coach? I keep saying business because my mind is set on businesses.
That's all right.
What does it take to what does it take to be a mindset coach? And what does your day-to-day look like?
Yeah. So when I say mindset coach, the technical terms behind that for me is my training is in cognitive behavioral coaching, as well as mental health coaching, right? And so it really is it's helping people to get a better grasp on what's going on in their mind, how their mind works, and how to work with their mind so that they can make the changes in their life that they want with more ease, more clarity, and more conviction, right? So, and when we say mindset, it really is just a combination of perception, perspective, and interpretation, right? How you are interpreting what you perceive, what you experience, and ultimately the perspective that you carry with you into different environments, different relationships, different conversations. And so, when I say mindset coach, that's what I'm referring to. That's how I help the folks that I work with. And the typical day for me, it's, I don't know that it's much different from, I would say, almost a typical coach, outside of the fact that I have a lot of conversations with folks about what's happening in their head so that they can understand why it's producing the behavior that they're exhibiting.
Yeah. Okay, that is so far from anything that I know. You're talking about your approach with an understanding of cognitive behaviors and how that plays out on a day to day, like the things that you're taking in, day out, how we process stress. Are we stressed? I don't even know when I'm actually stressed. So if things, I have to be frustrated in order for me to be like, maybe I need a break. So unless things are like very clear, right, that I'm mad,
Yeah.
frustrated, super happy. Anything in between is just,
A lot of
I
people are
don't know.
like that.
Okay. So what would you say is the common theme for people that are struggling to balance, let's say, family, work, relationships? Um, yeah, like what's the common factor that you see, a reoccurring factor that you see with people struggling with balancing all those three things?
Yeah. I think it's twofold. If I'm honest, it's a lack of awareness and then a lack of tools. And typically by the time someone gets to a place where they realize, man, yeah, I'm out of balance. Like I'm stressed when I'm at work, when I'm at home, things are frustrating, and I feel like I'm not fully present there. Uh, that is, on a scale of 1 to 100, that's like a 30% awareness. And when I talk about a lack of awareness, I'm talking about understanding the full scope of what's taking place in each area of your life, your personal life, your family life, your social life, and your career life, which my first book, Life Balance, is all about helping you to get a good grasp on that. And
Yeah.
when you're fully aware of what's happening in those four key areas of life, the answers almost begin to scream at you like, hey, this is where the problem is. Right? So if you're
Yeah.
looking at the four, those four areas, your personal life, your family life, your social life, and your career life, and you do a sort of survey of these areas, an assessment of, okay, where is the health or lack of health right now, you can begin to see, okay, what areas are overlooked or I'm not giving enough attention to that's causing the issue in my life overall. And it becomes really apparent and really clear. Now, the issue is some folks, even if they grow in that awareness, they don't always feel like they have the tools or the right tools to address the issue without maybe causing more problems. Right. And so, you know, you recognize, man, you know what? The issue is I am really struggling with, the workload that I have at work. And as a result, when I get home, I'm not mentally and emotionally present. And so I end up causing tension and issues with my spouse, with my children, and so on. And so if I can really address this issue with my workload, then I can alleviate that a bit. But they don't always feel like they know where to start, without maybe damaging their job or their relationship with their boss or something. And so it's those two things that tend to surface: lack of awareness and lack of tools.
Okay. And so with awareness, one, how does one build awareness, and what is the what is the proper remedy for maintaining the ability to be aware, self-aware, or like introspection in the medium to long term, right? Because I can learn the right tool to use to be aware of X, Y, and Z, but with time, I might lose
Yeah.
that. Right? I feel like it's one of those things that just doesn't come naturally, and if you have to work to attain it, you're probably gonna lose it easily because it's not something that you don't have to think twice about it. So I guess, yeah, question: how does one become self-aware? What is the process of doing that, and how do you maintain that across time? Because I feel like that would be the challenging part.
Yeah. Uh, I think that's a phenomenal question, Moses. And the answer might be surprising to some folks, for others, hopefully, to be, a bit obvious. But you become self-aware in the same way that you develop a relationship with anybody. Like if I want to become more aware of who you are as a person, who is Moses? What is he like? If I were your friend, how do I be a good friend to Moses? How do I show up for him when he's in need? How do I help him to de-stress when he's clearly overwhelmed? the only way for me to do that is to spend time with you, to ask questions, to be intentional. And you do the exact same thing for developing awareness or self-knowledge, right? Self-awareness or self-knowledge.
Yeah.
You have to spend time with yourself. And for many people in the developed world, that is a difficult, almost scary thing. A lot of people are afraid of being alone with their thoughts. And so they're
Yeah.
constantly distracting themselves, not just with social media, but, with entertainment, with friends, with conversations, with workouts and hobbies and so on and so forth. They distract themselves from what's happening internally. And so what I typically recommend when I'm working with a client who's trying to build self-awareness and, develop these skills, these tools for self-care, I challenge them to schedule in a weekly time, typically, at least once a week, where you're sitting down and doing intentional reflection. There's specific questions you can ask yourself about, okay, how am I doing this week? you know, what went really well for me this week that I can celebrate, in whatever area of life, in my personal life, family life. What didn't go very well? What am I really struggling with right now at work, at home, with my friends? Like, what are the things that seem to be a hindrance to me in my personal growth journey? And it sounds so simple, but that's where the power is. The power is in executing this very simple thing. It's like doing push-ups every day. It's very easy, very direct, very simple. But if you do push-ups every day, it improves your heart health. It improves your mind health, the health of your brain. It improves your body, and you build muscles. And push-ups are very simple. So this exercise, this activity is very simple, very direct. Spend about half hour to an hour. I do about an hour and a half on Fridays in the afternoon. That's why I don't take clients on Fridays. That's my day. And I spend time just with me. I'll go to a coffee shop and I'll spend about an hour and a half going through my journal. I'll walk through these questions with myself, and I'll check in on how I'm doing. And that improves my ability to care for myself.
That's that's powerful. I heard a guy named Jordan Peterson. I don't know if you're aware of him or why
Yeah,
you might think of him, but he said treat yourself like you are someone that you really care for, right?
yeah, yeah. I like
And that's
that.
something super. It's a super simple statement, but it caught me off guard because I'm like, wait, I don't do that. Like I like to think that I like myself, but in practice, if you really care for someone, you'll give them time. You'll spend time with them. You'll try to nurture and cultivate that relationship to some
Yeah,
capacity, right? If you go X amount of time without communicating with them, you're gonna check in, and if they don't check in, and you'll be like, hey, what's going on?
hmm
And it's so simple, like you said, but we just don't do it. I don't know why. I don't know, even though like I have the conceptual understanding of it, and I'm able to regurgitate what I heard, but
yeah,
the actual day in day out, or the implementation of that idea is a lot more difficult than the idea itself.
Can I challenge
So
you?
I guess, yeah.
So two things jumped out at me as you were sharing, and this might be my coach brain kicking in just a little bit, so you can stop me. Um,
You're good.
but the two things that surfaced is, one, when you said, we just don't do it, or I just don't do it, and two, the implementation is difficult. And if you were my
Yeah.
client, for example, if this were a session and we were talking and you said those two things, I'd say, one, instead of saying I just don't do it, I would challenge you to say it I don't do it currently, right? Because what
Why is that important?
you're telling your brain, especially when you say this out loud, you're telling your brain, even though I
Yeah.
don't do it now, it doesn't mean I'm writing it off completely. At some point, I want this to be normal for me. And so your brain is more receptive to it whenever you
Yeah.
actually go to implement, which goes to the next
Okay.
point of the implementation is hard. Instead of saying the implementation is hard or
Yeah.
difficult, say it's inconvenient, right? because when you say something is hard, your brain expects difficulty and it looks for difficulty. If you say it's inconvenient, it may actually be very easy for you to do. It's just a matter of scheduling, right? You make it more convenient. And so you do these two things, and it over time, if you practice that, it begins to on a unconscious level rewire your brain's relationship to the idea of self-care and self-check-ins.
Yeah, that kind of falls right in line with the whole idea of the things that we hear, say, and tell ourselves slowly become the reality that we experience, independently of the actual reality. So,
100%.
and also kind of ties in with the whole, with the idea that, well, words are powerful.
Yeah,
Right?
yeah.
And we all know that superficially. So the more that you say something, the more that you start believing in that. So okay, so I said that implementation is hard. So now I need to start saying that
It's inconvenient.
it's inconvenient. It's inconvenient. Now, what would be an example of? I like to break things down into the smallest possible step that I can take in order to achieve the goal.
Yeah.
Right? So if I'm facing task A and it's so grandiose that I won't even approach it, so I end up giving up before I even start. I'm like, okay, Moses, okay, let's just, as stupid as we can be, let's try to attack this like one bite at a time.
Yeah.
Right? So what would be an example of the smallest possible step that I can take in the implementation of this? Right?
Yeah.
In order to get to where I need to be.
Yeah. I love that practice. I spend an entire chapter in my book talking about the importance of breaking down your goals into the smallest possible step, because the goal is to get started. Once you get started, you can build momentum. But if it's too big for you to just start, you won't even have a chance at reaching the goal, much less building momentum. So kudos to you. I think that's phenomenal. But if you want to break that goal down and say, okay, you know what? The idea of spending half hour, once a week by myself in a coffee shop, like that is just, it's a lot for my time. It's a lot for my mind. I'm a little hesitant about that much time alone. You can break it down into what feels more manageable. So for example, a very simple, small first step might be in the morning. We all have a version or a variation of a morning routine, right? In the morning, maybe while you're brushing your teeth, right? So you're face to face in the mirror typically, or even if just as you're going through your routine, maybe you're taking a shower, you make it a habit to just ask the question, how am I doing today? Or if you want to be more proactive, how do I want my day to go today? How do I want to feel today? And you begin to aim your brain in the direction of the day you want to have, and ultimately the life you want to live, but the day you want to have. And that way, you're not really spending a ton of time alone. You're not scheduling extra time out of your day if you don't have the extra time to schedule. You're marrying this new activity with something you're already doing, where you have the time and bandwidth to begin to just ask simple questions to yourself. Like, how am I doing? How can I do better? How do I want to do? Questions like that.
Yeah. Noted. Definitely noted. As you were speaking, I was thinking about the fact that, like, one of the biggest punishments that we have today for a human being is to, put them in a
solitary confinement.
Solitary confinement.
Yep.
Right. It's just you.
Yeah.
You, darkness, and your thoughts. And I suppose for the vast majority of us, we are essentially our biggest obstacle, our biggest monster. And to face that monster on a day in, day out can be a daunting task. So, 5 minutes at a time while brushing teeth. Got it. Now I'm gonna start hating the teeth brushing session. Thanks.
Well, see that right there again. I'm gonna throughout this. I'm gonna keep catching
mindset.
That. So you speaking out. Now I'm going to start hating. You're communicating to your brain the activity you want it to produce.
Yeah.
Right. So you can actually tell
Right,
yourself, don't
right.
lie, like, okay, it's going to be my favorite time of the day. Probably not, but I'm going to start trying this
Right,
activity.
right. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah, no, I will. I will. I will definitely try. Currently, the thing that I do that's obviously not working is I will take a walk, a brisk walk. Not, nothing's too long, but I often have either music on, or I'm listening to a book, or I'm listening to a podcast. So it's not exactly me
Yeah.
with just me, right? It's me, my thoughts, and then some good music in the background, or XY person talking in my ear. So an adjustment can be, just completely get rid of all those sensory inputs as I'm trying to have my
Yeah,
me time
yeah,
here.
and if we
So
can real quick revisit the idea
noted.
of solitary confinement, I posted about this the other day,
Yeah,
and in my newest book that I recently released, it's actually I actually mentioned solitary confinement as as a reference to the idea of isolation, but it's interesting because there's
yeah,
a sort of dual understanding and relationship that we have as the human race with isolation and aloneness. um Loneliness and loneliness are two
yeah,
different things, but the
yeah,
the growth or the progress towards self-actualization, like discovering your purpose, becoming who you feel you are fully designed and created to be, requires intentional uh, is time of isolation where you are alone, whether that's for meditating or mindfulness, or for planning and strategizing what you want to do, where you want to go, how you want to get there. It's necessary to have
yeah,
pockets of time, intentional time alone, where you're using that time for self awareness and personal care and self growth, but it can't be an extended time, because what happens, and this is where the solitary confinement ideation
okay,
come in, or idea come in. A lot of
yeah,
folks, they'll get burnt or get hurt, and they'll lodge into their brain, okay, I can't trust anyone. I'm not gonna, be around people anymore, and so I'm going to isolate and try to build and change my life and prove people wrong or prove people right. And that mindset,
yeah,
it plunges us into long-term isolation, which is detrimental. It is a form of torture, because now your brain has no context for your experiences, because other people help to contextualize what we go through. And healthy community actually helps to give us
yeah,
the necessary strength to push through and persevere through difficult times. And so it's necessary to have a balance there, where you're not in long term isolation, but you do have enough time alone to process internal realities.
yeah, yeah. I think a wiser individual. I can't remember who. So like whenever it was an advice to me. Said if it's my dad, maybe I shouldn't be saying this loud because he's gonna hear it, and then it's gonna be like, "Ha, you took it to heart." Anyways, it says whenever you find yourself on one extreme, chances are there's a lot of stuff that you're missing in the middle. So you probably wanna go back and revisit those. So that's just kind of to summarize that. If you're spending no time with yourself, hey, you gotta do some adjusting. If you're spending too much alone time, or if you are lonely, right? Like you said, there's a difference between being
Yeah,
alone and lonely. That's probably an overcorrection too. So you probably want to do something that would lead to
yeah,
the opposite result there. So that's a powerful insight there. What what about when it comes to? I'm not there yet. I'm not at this phase of life yet. But like when you toss in kids into the equation, right? So you have work, you have your social life to maintain, you have your spousal obligations to maintain, and then you throw kids into the mix. Then they got soccer after school, they got this, they got that, and then you got business meeting. My goodness, where where does one find the not just the alone time, right, to check in with oneself, but just to balance those fundamental pillars of I guess if each one of those pillars were if you were good in each one of those pillars, you would be considered a
Hmm.
successful individual, and to maintain all those four pillars standing strong, and you being the
Yeah,
foundation of those. How do you keep
yeah.
the foundation
And
strong?
I think that is the key, the foundation, because you have to build on something. These four
Yeah.
areas of your life have to stand on
Yep.
something.
Yep.
And really, the foundation for most people is what I call your true north, or you can call it your value system if you want to do that. But when I'm
Yep.
working with clients, I have a client right now that I'm thinking of where they work a very demanding job. They're a high level executive and they have a full house right now, with kids, and their kids are fairly young. And so right now they're having a hard time with
Yeah.
balancing the two, and trying to, work with their spouse to find the right rhythm. And this is what I would say to folks who find themselves in that space, because I have a friend who actually asked me this early on in my coaching, is he's like, what are you going to tell me if I have
Mm.
all of this stuff happening, and I need to make sacrifices for the business to grow and keep food on the table. And he was kind of expecting me to say, oh man, well, you're totally the exception. And that's not the case. It sometimes
Mm.
it's
Mm.
not about the
Yeah.
quantity of time you can find to spend with your loved ones. It's about the quality of time, and how you use the little time you do have with them, right? If you're in a season of life, because everyone's season of life is
Yeah.
different. And this is one of the ideas that I really break down um, in the book, is the idea of synergetic balance. And so you need, instead of looking at
Mm.
a sort of equal amount of energy across each area of life, so your personal, family, social, and career life, uh, depending on your season of
Yeah.
life, you need a synergetic relationship, a give and take between each area, depending on your season of life. So, someone in college, for example, a healthy life balance will look like, and for their career life, it's their academic career, will look like probably 80% of their time is going to be spent on their academic career. You know, a good 10% might be their social life, right? And then they'll have about 5%, or
Yeah.
per split between their family life and their personal life, right? And for them in that season of life,
Yep.
what's some variation of that is going to be healthy. That's the season of life they're in. Their primary focus is their academic career, so most of their time, most of their energy is going to be there. The problem comes in when they're one trying to make their life balance look like, retired individuals, but they're actually in college. Your life balance is very different, right? And so you need a
Mm.
sense of synergetic balance. And so you got
Yeah.
to ask very intentional questions like, based on my season of life, what does a healthy personal life look like? What does a healthy family life look like, et cetera, social and career, and find a synergetic relationship between each area of life, right? And like I said, if you are working a very demanding job, you don't have a
Yeah.
lot of time, maybe the shift you need to make in your thinking is not so much how do I find more time to spend with my kids and my family, because that's a matter of your values and what you're willing to sacrifice in the season of life, what's required of your responsibilities. There's a lot in there. So maybe you shift your focus to how can I improve the quality of time I spend with my kids, so that they understand, mom and dad still loves them. They're still present. They still want to be there. But right now, in this season of life, this is something that has to happen. And how can you integrate that into your conversation and teaching, and make them partners in your life as opposed to victims of your schedule? So that's something that I would lean into for those clients.
Yeah. Yeah. Just a little offhanded comment here. how much does alcohol play into? I don't know if you know anything in this area at all, but does alcohol seem to fit into the equation here as far as our ability or inability to have this self reflection, or even wanting to go there, to take our mind there? Is there a relationship with alcohol here
Well,
at
it
all?
depends on the amount that's being consumed. 100%. There can be very easily a relationship, right? Because alcohol can become a coping mechanism. So instead of spending time alone,
Yeah,
and
yeah,
working through some maybe potentially difficult conversations with ourselves and facing some difficult realities, like, okay, you know what? Home life is not very happy right now. I don't feel like my kids think I love them. I don't feel like my spouse feel appreciated because I just don't feel like I'm doing well in communicating that with my time, so on and so forth. And so instead of sitting alone with those thoughts and working through them, or sitting with a coach like myself and working through those thoughts, you go to alcohol, and what it does, if you consume enough of it, it'll begin to numb your senses towards those things, right? And you just inhibit your ability to process those
okay,
emotions and feelings. However, I certainly don't recommend this, but I don't want to discount the fact that there are folks who they might have a glass of wine once a week, twice a week at the end of the day, when they're sitting down with their spouse, because they're like, man,
yeah,
I've just had such a long day. Would you sit and have a drink with me or something? And, I wouldn't necessarily put that in the
yeah,
category of they're coping with alcohol as much as, it's a reward that they're giving themselves at the
right,
end of the day. But if they begin to do that every night, or multiple times a day, or before they get home, they'll stop and have a drink and then have another drink at home. When the behavior begins to look more like that, then yeah, you're probably leaning into alcoholism and becoming an alcoholic, which is a hard thing to admit. And you should probably seek help immediately if that reflects your current reality.
yeah, yeah. That makes sense. Makes sense. On the coaching side, what are the hesitancies to seek out a coach like you? Like, is this something that like, do people feel like maybe I shouldn't seek out a coach because that is perhaps, I don't know, a signal of weakness? Is that, like, what are some of the hesitancies that lead people from not even taking the first step
Yeah.
of reaching out to a coach
I
like you?
think the first one is finances, because right now it's an
Okay.
unfortunate setup, but due to the demand, and there's a growing number of coaches, so this may change over the course of the next 3 to 5 years. At least I think there's a high probability that it will. But due to the demand, coaching right now, and
Yeah.
getting coaching is very much a privilege in society, more so than a necessity, right? I think therapy has become more of a necessity, and you can receive therapy using your insurance. Because with therapists, in order for them to continue seeing you, they have to diagnose you with something. And in order for them to receive payment through an insurance agency, they have to be treating a diagnosable issue, a diagnosable mental issue. That's why they can, take insurance. For
Yeah.
coaches, we do not work with diagnosable issues. So we're not going to help you. We're not trained more specifically to help you navigate bipolar disorder or clinical depression or anything like that. That's not our training, and any ethical coach will tell you that. And so,
Yep.
because of that, coaching is typically
Yep.
all cash, right? And so you have to pay out of pocket, and you can't go through insurance, and that tends to be a hurdle for a lot of folks who are looking for it. But for those who can afford it, the hesitancy comes in when the coach begins to challenge their realities and their perspective, right? Because coaching only works if you are truly tired of being where you are and getting the results you're getting in life. If you're not really tired, if you're not sick
Yeah.
and tired
Yeah.
of being sick and tired, then the challenges, the request that the coach is going to make of you is going to seem unreasonable. It's going to seem insurmountable, almost like, hey, you know, we are completely restructuring, for example, your social circle because of the influence they're having on you and the results it's producing in your life. And so if you want a different result, you need different influences. And we're going to start with the foundation, which is the people around you. and we're going to completely restructure that. That's not an easy thing for someone to do unless they are determined and almost
Right.
desperate to really begin to see a different result in their life. And so there's a lot of hesitancy around, okay, I'm going to pay, for the most part, a pretty good amount of money for someone who's a professional at understanding the mind and helping to shift behavior, or, growing my business, or whatever the coach's expertise is. Am I actually committed to the change and doing what they're asking me? Because if I'm not going to see the result. And then all of a sudden I'm paying a lot of money for really no result because I'm not implementing. So, the first would be
Yeah.
finances. The second is actually,
Hmm.
am I willing to make the big changes that the coach is going to be asking of me?
Okay. Okay. Do you see examples of people getting pushback from their immediate circle as they're trying to ameliorate their lives? Let's say someone, they start to see you, and some of the suggestions that you have them, do in their lives. Let's say, hey, maybe cut down on that after work alcohol consumption, and then all of a sudden, they're not hanging out with the people that would hang out with after work every day for that alcohol time.
Yeah.
Do people face a lot of pushback from their immediate circles?
Uh, I wouldn't say a lot. Interestingly,
Okay.
when I was going into coaching,
Yeah.
uh, I kind of expected that, but
Okay.
it does happen. It's just not often. So it does happen where, when you begin to make really foundational and big changes to your life, you not only upset your comfort
Yeah.
zone, you accept upset the comfort zone of the people who are closest to you. So people who you live with,
Right.
typically your closest friends, your colleagues that you're working with, if you're on a team,
Yeah.
depending on the goal you're working on. All of those comfort zones become upset because the routines have changed, the interactions have changed, you have changed. And
Yeah.
so typically, if you're around healthy people, and you tell them, hey, this is what I'm working on, they become cheerleaders. They want you to succeed. They're really kind of aiming and pushing for you to get it done. They may not always understand, and that's where some of the frustration comes in, where it's kind of like, you're always journaling now. Every night before you go to bed, you're always pulling that notebook out and journaling instead of writing, like instead of watching
Yeah.
TV with me. Why do you do that? And you
Yeah.
can either explain to them, or you can live with the discomfort for a while until that becomes a new routine. But there are times where, a client will get some really strong pushback, or get into arguments because they're just kind of like, the people around them aren't very supportive, and then it begins
Yeah.
to become an issue for them with the pushback. But that hasn't happened a lot so far, at least with the clients I've worked with.
Okay. I think I think that's a good definition of a friendship or a spouse or a life partner. It's like someone that when you make a change in your life that produces good fruits in your own life, even though those fruits are not being manifested in their lives, they're happy for you, right? And they're willing to cheer you on as you're making these leaps and these changes to ameliorate the conditions of your life.
Yeah.
Instead of hey, you're no longer like drinking with us, so we're not gonna hang out with you, or you're always journaling what's going on there. Are you getting all X, Y, and Z, and then they start distancing themselves from you.
Yeah.
That would be an easy way of identifying the person that is not a good friend.
Yeah. Definitely.
I'm getting a squirrel mind here, so I'm gonna ask I'm gonna ask a quick question. What is your absolute earliest memory?
My.
Like if you can think back,
Huh.
because yeah, like if you just try to go all the way back, is it a picture? Is it an event? What absolute earliest memory that you can think of, as far back as you can go?
I think my earliest memory. Uh, so I'm Jamaican originally, and when I was 5, living with my family in
Mm.
Jamaica, I remember getting this birthday card that I was really excited about, like, you know, the ones you open up and it starts to like make noises or something. And I was really excited about it. And I remember, you know, going around showing my cousins and stuff. And somehow in the midst of it being passed around, it ripped. And I got so upset and sad, uh, you know, and I just kind of, I don't know what I did. I think I took it and just, you know, put it in a room or something. But for some reason, that is the
Yeah.
earliest memory I can clearly recall.
Really? So about age
Yeah,
5.
yeah.
Okay, and when was the last time you visited that memory? It's not exactly a pleasant one,
Um, I don't
but
remember the last time I revisited that memory. You know, it. I know for certain that yeah, I've had the thought before. You know, because my wife and I, she remembers things
yeah.
that you know goes beyond age 5. I think maybe 3 years old or something is her earliest memory, which is just amazing to me. I didn't know that was possible. Um,
Yeah.
so I know for certain I've
Yeah.
thought it up before. I can't recall the last time I revisited it though.
Okay. I was just throwing you a little curveball there.
No,
Um,
that's fine. It's
just
good.
yeah, yeah. You mentioned that you grew up in Jamaica. When was the last time that you were there? Like, did you live there and grow up there, or like what was the growing up situation
Yeah,
there?
so I was born in Jamaica. I lived there until I was about 8 or 9 years old, and then migrated to the States.
Okay. Okay.
And you know, so a good portion of my early childhood is, you know, it's just Jamaica.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Okay. No, I'm asking that because I was talking earlier with my partner about mindsets across cultures.
Yeah,
And I grew up in Mozambique, and there
nice.
was this time, about a 2 year time span, where we were in in a refugee camp, and the conversation had to do with businesses and business creation, and I was trying to figure out how come, like, you know, in the Western world, so to speak, sometimes there's this idea that, you know, starting a business is, you know, extremely difficult, or you have to be coming from money, or you succeed in business because X, Y, and Z. So there's always a reason why someone has succeeded in
Yeah,
business, or in whatever venture of life, and you didn't, or you won't because you don't have those particular situations. Anyways, but the refugee camp in Mozambique, while you're all refugees, you're all coming from different countries. You are not from that country, and there's just businesses left and right. There's farmers. There's the person that charges phones. There's no electricity, so they have to, you know, buy batteries from the main city and bring it back, and, you know, buy solar panels, charge phones for local people. I mean, there's movie theater. Try to think of movie theater with no
yeah,
electricity.
yeah.
So to talk about differences in mindsets. The reason I'm bringing that up is I'm trying to figure out for you. I mean, you left Jamaica when you were young, so maybe this you might not be able to answer this question. But are there some cultural mindsets that you've noticed in the U.S. that could inhibit people from succeeding in whatever area of life, that you don't necessarily see them in other cultures, or in Jamaican culture?
Yeah.
It's probably like too broad of a question, but I'm trying to narrow that down a little bit.
No, that's all right. You know, I think the biggest thing for me, you know, or at least the thing that immediately surfaces in my mind is kind of the victim mindset, that sense
Hmm.
of, you know, the world is working against me, the chips are stacked against me, so I can't. And admittedly, you know, I've caught myself in this mindset plenty of times,
Yeah,
where,
yeah,
you know, like you said, whenever you look at least some of the business folks that I admire, you know, I look at what they've accomplished and what they've done, and then you begin to read their story and you realize, oh man, they had a pretty significant boost or a head start, or you know, they were born into a particular
yeah,
family
yeah,
that allowed them certain privileges. which kind of gave them an advantage,
Yeah.
or whatever the case is. And it's
Yeah.
very easy. And I would add, it's also dangerous if you find yourself locked into that mindset, because now your brain is trained to see your hurdles as insurmountable without, factor X, which is what that business owner has, or that successful business person received. And factor X is something you can attain if you want to, if you need to. If your life depended on it, you'd figure it out, kind of thing. Uh, and I think in the
Yeah.
U.S., that's probably the biggest thing that I've noticed. But one of the other thing that I've
Okay.
noticed, which is interesting, is you know Jamaican people are very prideful people, to a fault
Mm.
many times. Where there's a sense of I'm too proud to do X, or I'm too proud, for you to speak to me that way, or whatever the case
Okay.
is. Sometimes it's a
Yeah.
good thing.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's not a very good thing. But because of that,
Mm.
whenever they do, start a business, the business is really a sort of extension of themselves, and they function from the place of,
Mm.
this is me, and this is a part of who I am and who I want to be and who I want to present myself as.
Okay.
And the service is kind of a representation of that. Whereas in the US, in order to succeed at business, I'm learning, you really kind of have to separate yourself from your business. You have to see your business as a business and not an extension of yourself, and treat it like that. And
Yeah.
so if you can imagine, if you're building a business, for example, Moses, uh, my challenge to
Mm.
you would be to ask yourself, if you're trying to make a difficult decision, if you were a consultant for your business, right? If you weren't the CEO and founder, and they just hired you as a consultant to give them feedback and advice on how to
Yeah.
grow, what would you tell them to do? And it's a very different
Mm.
mindset.
Mm. Okay. Yeah. Yeah. Huh. Wow. Yeah. That definitely changes perspectives, because it's like you go from, I'm defending this thing that I've put so much, sweat, blood, and tears in, and I'm attached
Hmm.
to it, to, hey, in order for this thing to be where it needs to be, I really need to dissect it. Um,
Yeah.
yeah, that that goes right, like hand in hand with our inability to differentiate ourselves from our thoughts. And when we are married to an idea, and an idea attacks that idea, they're not attacking the idea, they're attacking us. So if I'm trying to make X decision, and someone makes a bad comment about the decision that I'm trying to make, instead of me saying, hey, maybe there's some validity to this criticism, it's like, no, you're not attacking that idea, you're attacking me. And that just,
Yeah.
it's not a good foundation to problem solving,
Yeah.
or to build a
You
business at
can't
all.
lead a team like that.
Yeah.
It
Yeah.
simply doesn't work. You have to separate yourself emotionally from your business, and unless, of course, your business is directly tied to your emotional reality, which there are some businesses like that, but this is
Yeah.
depend.
Yeah.
My business, for example, is not one.
Yeah. What led you to start this business?
Really, it kind of found me. If I'm honest with
Hmm.
you, uh, I was always interested in entrepreneurship. I you know started and launched a record label, and kind of was in that world for a little bit. And through a series of events, I was a pastor for a while, and when I transitioned from being a pastor, I was one of the pastors on staff at a fairly large church up in Jersey. And when I transitioned from that, I decided to just write, and so I started blogging, and I was like, oh, I'll
Okay.
compile some of my blog posts into a sort of ebook to give to my audience, to just
Yeah.
say, hey, here's something that's helpful. And that should have taken me maybe a week. And instead of it
Hmm.
taking me a week, it turned into an 8-month long project of me just continuing to write and research. And it turned into my first book. And when I launched the book,
Okay.
I started to get requests for coaching and for speaking. And so, it just kind of grew from there. And, it's kind of a snowball effect. It started with just me. And then I brought on a coach, and that turned into two coaches, and here we are.
Okay, amazing story. Um, so you probably know a thing or two about public speaking then. So and how much mindset goes into that? Or is it a personality trait? Is it a like some people are meant to be public speakers, some aren't? Because yeah, when I think about standing in front of people and just opening my mouth, it's like one of the biggest fears. I've done it, of course, and I think it's constantly listed as one of the biggest fears of people. Can you touch
Yeah.
on that? Like what it takes to do public speaking?
Yeah. It's definitely not a personality trait, I'll tell you that. Yeah, I think it can probably be linked to, developmental psychology. So what you were exposed to growing up, and what you were kind of encouraged to do as a child, and how that shaped your self perception and how you responded to what people thought about you, and all of that stuff is, there's probably some link there, but it's definitely
Yeah.
not a personality trait. I'd say it's more of a skill,
Yeah.
and it's, skill that you can develop, right? So in the same way that, riding a bicycle is a skill that you can learn, or roller skating.
Yeah.
But in order to do it well, one, you need to do it often, because everyone has a sort of style. There are the basic principles like writing, right? So there are basic grammatic structures that you work within when you're writing, whether
Yeah.
it's a book or an email or a blog post. But then when you write, right? So when Moses decides to write something, there is a voice, a perspective, a tone that you're going to bring to it based on your experience, your background. And the same happens whenever you're speaking. There are basic public speaking structures, or principles you work within, right, in order
Okay.
to command a room, to help to direct people's attention to where you want it to go, enunciating specific words, or tones,
Yeah.
making sure you're okay with pausing, in certain areas, in order to elevate, the meaning or the impact of whatever it is you're delivering. They're basic structures, but then the more you do it, there's a tone, there's a personality that you bring to it individually. So you have to practice it in order to discover that. And then two, it really is a sense of, if you want to be comfortable with it, uh, you need to really describe what success looks like for you with public speaking. Not success in
Yep.
terms of how large the audience is or where you're speaking, but success in terms of the response you want from the audience, regardless of size or location, right?
Yeah.
So for
Yeah.
me, when I was a pastor, the response was always application. I wanted to make sure people understood and felt empowered to apply whatever it is I was talking about. And for me, it's
Yeah.
the same now with whatever I'm talking. And so
Mm.
if people left, and afterwards, I sometimes have a line of people that said, this really spoke to me, and I'm going to try this out, or I never thought about it
Yeah.
this way. I'm going to share it with my wife, and we're going to see if we can, make these changes to improve our life balance, or whatever the case is. That to me communicates success, because they understood and they feel empowered to apply it. So yeah, I mean, I hope that helps.
Yeah. Yeah. No. No. It certainly does. It certainly does. Most of the things that closely resemble public speaking that I've done either have to do with singing, which really terrible at it,
Very nice.
or theater in high school, and I should emphasize singing at church. So,
Yeah,
uh,
well, I mean, that's
yeah,
great practice. Both of those are great
yep,
practice. It gets you comfortable in front of an audience.
right, right. Paul, before we come to a close here, are there things that you want the audience to walk away with, particularly in respect to, um, let me put it this way. So maybe we think like other people have it all together, or like maybe it's like, oh, maybe it's just me that overthink things. Maybe it's just me that I'm facing X, Y, and Z. Maybe like everyone seems to be, strolling through the world with their head over their shoulders. Is that the saying? with their shoulders back, things are good. But that might not be, the reality of everyone. How do I call the question here is like, how do I cultivate good mindset? You might have to define what good here is. And without me being, like an extraordinary person that's doing, all kinds of crazy things in life. I'm a normal person. I got my 9 to 5. I got my problems, and
Yeah.
so what? I drink a beer every now and then, but
Yeah.
I'm trying to figure out a way of shaping my mind, yeah, so that I can continue to live in the way that I live, but add something positive to the way that I look at my at the world, because essentially my mind shapes the reality that I live in, and so the more that I nurture the mind, the more that I'm in tune with who I am,
Yeah.
the more
Yeah.
that I'm able to view my reality, more clearly. So, just to close out here, I know I'm kind of coming towards the end of the time here. What are some of the things that you would want to leave the audience with?
Yeah. Well, there's a lot that can be said. I'll try to say two things very quickly. The first is have a clear sense of yourself. Self-image, who you want to be, and who you want to become. There's a psychologist by the name of Carl Rogers, and he pioneered the idea behind the congruent and incongruent self, which is, the gap between or overlap between your self-image, how you currently see yourself, and your ideal self, the self you want to be, the self you want to become. And the goal is
Yeah.
to, as you work throughout, towards or walk through life, is to grow those two to become essentially as close as possible to being the same thing. And if you're incongruent, there's going to be a lot of difficulty, a lot of stress, a lot of issues in your life because you're like, man, I'm not who I want to be. I don't feel I'm living up to my potential the way I know I'm capable of.
Yeah.
And that produces a lot of negative feelings, thoughts, and emotions. So you want to be clear on who you want to become, and then recognize that your mindset is a result, right? Your mindset is a result. And if you want to change the result, you got to change the formula, right? If right now your mindset, for sake of clarity, if your mindset is producing a cake and you're like, I don't want a cake anymore. I don't want to be a cake anymore. I don't feel like a cake anymore. I want to feel like a cookie. You got to change the ingredients, right? And the ingredients is always a variation of people, places, and things. Who are the people around you?
Okay.
Where are the places that you frequent physically and mentally? And what are the things that you interact with and do most frequently? The combination of those three things is always going to produce your mindset. If you want to change your mindset, make adjustments to those three things, and you'll produce a new mindset. And can I say one more thing?
Yes, sir.
And
Yeah.
this is the
Yeah.
last thing I'll say. No one accomplishes anything significant by themselves. Everyone needs a team. Every person you look
Okay.
up to and admire in terms of their accomplishments, whether it's a business person, someone in entertainment, someone, religiously, whoever, everyone had a team in order to accomplish something of significance. And so if right now you don't have a team, healthy people around you, mentors, people who are accomplishing what it is you're aiming for, then start cultivating a team that's going to help you to move towards the significant change, growth, result that you're looking for. And if you want help with that, professional help with that, that's where coaches come in. Now
And
I'll end with that.
that's amazing. That's amazing. Could you list the names of the two books again? Just and if people are curious to follow
Sure.
you and to find you, where can they look?
Sure. So my first book is called Life Balance, The Life Balance Approach to Reaching Your Goals and Changing Your Life. And the second book is called The Daily Dose. Both books, if you want to get either book, they're both on Amazon. Life Balance was actually a #1 bestseller multiple times on Amazon for anyone who happens to care. And you can find them both on Amazon just by searching my name, Paul W. Croswell. Last name is spelled Croswell, one S, two L's. And I spelled that out because if you want to find me or any of our coaches, you just got to visit croswellcoaching.com. croswellcoaching.com. You'll find links to our social media. You'll find the other coaches. You find myself. And you'll find other free resources as well.
Paul Croswell, everybody. Thank you so much for coming to the Moses Kabandana Podcast.
Thanks so much for having me. This was phenomenal, Moses.